Well, thanks everyone for being here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for Dr. Dillon for the invitation. I know that he's been in correspondence with our board, with OCM, Organization for Competitive Markets, and I think we've got a lot of synergy here. You're in one end of the meat inspection entity, and we are on the producer side. So I think this gives us an opportunity to be able to see where we align. Just wanted to start out by saying that we are OCM, we are Organization for Competitive Markets. As you can see, fighting for economic justice for Americans, family, farmers, and ranchers. That is what we do. And what I plan to do with these pictures, I figured instead of just having a PowerPoint presentation with words, I'm just going to use pictures because pictures are 1,000 words and I can just flip through them very quickly. You can see, why is antitrust reform such a big deal? That's the question that we want to address right here this morning. And this is why OCM exists. We are a board of directors. We're not all pictured on there. There's 12 actually represented states and board of directors from California the whole way to the East Coast and many states in between. As you can see, Taylor Haynes is in the center there. Taylor is with me this morning, Dr. Taylor Haynes from Wyoming. He'll be speaking just after me. So thank you, Taylor, for coming from Wyoming. So, and I'm from Pennsylvania, if I hadn't said that so far. I'm the executive director of the organization and have the privilege of working with these producers all across the nation. Von Meyer is our president. Von is a rancher in South Dakota. I was able to be on his ranch last summer, right after the RCAF convention, and a beautiful country, big sky up in that area. It's really a beautiful area. Fred Stokes, who you'll be hearing from also, he'll be joining with us via Teams just after this. Fred is the founder of the organization. Fred is a very passionate person, as you will find out. He's 86 years old, and if I can be as sharp as him when I'm 86, I'll be very blessed. So very happy to have Fred found this organization, and it's just been great to be a part of it. How many of you recognize this face? Earl Butz, 1971, under the Nixon administration. He was the one that came up with the phrase fence row to fence row planting, which then also leads into our most recent that we had previously in America, the big get bigger and the small go out. Sonny Perdue was quoted in saying that. And there were a lot of producers that were upset in that simply because it appears as if corporations are the ones that are seeming to be favored in that scenario. So we've worked with multiple people. You might recognize John Eichert. John has been in the industry for many years and speaks out in these issues. John was a presenter with us at the OCM conference. I also was able to have John come. If you can see those mules in the background, you see those mules going down the street? There's no better way to reach out to the farmers than to actually have John Eichert come on their turf. So this was taken in a tobacco shed. And this is just one example of one more thing that we as an organization will do, is that we will connect the experts who know the industry with the farmers and create synergy in that way. You may recognize Rohit Chopra, Commissioner Chopra. We are actively engaged in conversation with him as well, and have invited him to come speak to our annual conventions over the years. Washington, D.C., we spend time there, just either in person, not as much here since COVID, but obviously still virtually. Mike Weaver is in the center. Mike Weaver was the former president of OCM, and Marty Irby is on our board currently as well. That picture was taken a few years ago. This just shows you the connections that we have within Washington, D.C. Marty Irby had the opportunity to represent and meet Donald Trump in that situation. Here's another situation where if not only are we going to have John Eichert come and speak to the Amish, I took it upon myself to take the Amish to Washington, D.C. You can see he's walking in front of the Supreme Court. I took that picture strategically. I didn't necessarily want him to know that I took it. If you know anything about the Amish, they don't like to be photographed. But it was a moment in time that I had to capture. If you've ever been to Washington, D.C., and you've been outside of AOC's office, that's the amount of love and support that she has with all of the posted notes, but the Amish wanted to have a few things to say as well, and they posted a few notes as to what they wanted to see. Raw milk was the issue, if you happen to want to know what they were talking about, but another priceless picture. Dietary guidelines, working specifically to try and, in this situation, get whole milk back into the schools. Speaking of conventions, National Farmers Union, American Farm Bureau, Zippy Duval, and also dealing with Newt Gingrich as well and some of the issues. Also had the opportunity to get out. That's another board member of ours, David Wright. He had the chance to speak on the checkoff issues at the RCAF convention. This is another big issue. I'm not sure where you fall on this, but we as an organization, as well as RCAF, are in support of 5014. Basically, it's legislation that would require 50% of the meat to be, or 50% of the cattle to be sold through auctions, and that a packer could not own those animals for more than 14 days. That's a critical piece for packer concentration issues and market concentration. Our board of directors at the RCAF convention in Florida, we had the opportunity just last fall to go and speak to ranchers in Florida itself. The entire board went. This is how devoted we are as a board. We go at our own expense, and we were invited to come speak at this auction house in Florida. This past summer, I was sent by the board to the TAMU conference. From my gauging, we were the only non-status quo organization there at that meeting, meaning that we were the only ones that were asking questions that may have challenged some of the economics or some of the USDA funded program of well, how do I say it? Diplomatic. Okay. I'll let Taylor. Diplomatic. Be like me. All right. Here we go. I'll let Taylor. You make sure you talk on that. Okay. Oh, don't worry. Okay. Also, getting out to the looking to get out to trade shows as much as possible. Testifying at Senate hearings. That's in Pennsylvania. Barn meetings. Marty Irby also came up. That's a picture of my barn. Had the Amish come to the barn. DMI, Dairy Management Inc., having meetings with dairy farmers. Here's you may recognize Jim Mulhern. He would be the president of National Milk Producers Federation, introducing them, obviously providing opportunity for the Amish to meet with them. The GAO office, obviously you know that the only way to get into the GAO office is through your senator, and there have been issues that we've dealt with specifically through OCM and other organizations collectively to bring attention to some of these issues that need to be addressed. Federal court buildings, obviously litigation is one other opportunity to be able to address some of the issues that need to be handled on a level when things cannot be resolved otherwise. If you're not familiar with the dairy industry, this is one thing that I specifically worked on in 2020, July 27, 2020, the United States Department of Justice, the DOJ filed an amicus brief in a lawsuit against Dairy Farmers of America, the United States' largest dairy cooperative. The lawsuit filed in Vermont U.S. District Court alleges that DFA and other cooperatives agreed to not compete for each other's farmers' members. They conspired to share payment information in order to discourage competition and to depress prices and maintain those low prices market-wide by entering into supply agreements with Dean Foods. And then it went on to explain. But the key issue in this is we work specifically uniting farmers to fix their own problems. The DOJ stepped in and they saw that we were, as plaintiffs, in the right. And I just wanted to make you be aware that the court systems is a function in which that can be used. Also reaching out into the press. This is a picture of our board in Washington, D.C. Had the opportunity to be able to invite legislators to our meeting this past summer, or I guess, yeah, it was summer, it was June. Typically, what we would do for a fly-in, and you're probably familiar with fly-ins, you all get together, you stay at the same hotel, you then walk the halls of Congress. But because of COVID and because of everything being shut down, that was not possible this year, but we still wanted to have it. So what we did is we rented a conference room in a motel and then put out the invite to each individual board member's representation. And I was amazed. We had 30, over a 2-day period, we had 30 representatives either come in person, send their staff, or a lot of it was also done, I should say not a lot, a third of it was done by Zoom. So we were able to be together in the same room and to be able to have conversation. It worked out very nice. 100% USA beef. This is maybe where, we might find some an agreement as well. The fact that, we feel that beef should be labeled. I know Taylor's going to talk specifically more on this. This is a voluntary label that's made available, that's trademarked, and I believe that the consumers would find it of much value to have their beef labeled. I saw this on Facebook the other day. I thought it was very interesting. American-made products don't get stuck on cargo ships. I'll let that speak for itself. American Antitrust Institute and OCM, we work together. In fact, we're working currently together right now on an initiative. And I'll read that. The American Antitrust Institute and Organization for Competitive Markets announced a new joint venture, breaking the market power bottleneck in the U.S. beef, a roadmap for building an independent ranching processing sector to promote competition in the U.S. beef supply chain. The OCM AAI Beef Initiative brings together two longstanding nonprofit organizations with deep industry expertise and competition advocacy track records. The joint initiative will support the competition policy initiatives recently introduced by the Biden administration, the Department of Agriculture, and to urge the U.S. Department of Justice and the USDA to consider full complement of policy tools needed to support competition in the beef for the benefit of consumers and producers. So Fred's going to speak specifically to this, so I won't get into that, but I just wanted to let you know that we are working specifically together with organizations to the end of a fair price for the consumer as well as a fair market for the producer. So I end with the slide that I begin. Fighting for economic justice for America's farmers and ranchers. I hope you could see that. Why is antitrust reform a big deal? I hope you could find that as well. And I'm going to close with 3 pictures, which shows you what we are missing currently. So these are my kids. I was a dairy farmer for 17 years, sold my cows 5 years ago because milk was not worth what it cost to make. And ranchers, I don't care if you are beef, I don't care if you're, what you're raising, competition is real and it's pushing the little guy out. This is going away. And the question is, are we okay with that? If we're not, then what can be done? Kids on the farm, you gotta love it. And I want to preserve that. And to conclude, that's my son is a 3 or 4-year-old. The cows are no longer there. Taylor?
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for having us here. Just a little bit about me. I'm a urologist, adult and pediatric, and a certified trauma surgeon, retired, used to do advanced trauma life support for doctors. I'm the 4th generation continuously in production agriculture since Emancipation Proclamation, so it's in my blood. I grew up on a produce farm in Louisiana with a cowboy's heart, allowed myself to be recruited to Utah as an engineer, and found my way to Wyoming so I could be a cowboy. And so I'm living my boyhood dream. And the thing that came along in my boyhood dream is antitrust, packer concentration, adulteration of our product. But let's, in the interest of time, I want to be specific. Let's talk about the beef checkoff, because I know that program, but it applied to dairy, poultry, hogs. Dairy farmers are by and large gone, independents. Hog farmers are almost collectible, they're so rare. And the same thing with poultry producers. They work for the Tysons, JBS, Smithfields of the world, and Smithfield's owned by Turner. The checkoff program was told to the ranchers after the 1985 Farm Bill as a way to promote beef, increase beef sales, cow sales throughout the whole chain. I sell live cattle. I've been on the retail side, but I'm on the direct wholesale or specialty market. I'm all certified grass-fed. That's another issue. But have you ever seen a commercial that's for live cattle? I bet you've seen a commercial for beef. It's what's for dinner. The checkoff program promotes beef sales. It has no effect on cattle sales except to drive the cattleman, the domestic cattle producer, out of business. Now you got to say, is that guy nuts? The more beef you sell, the more cows you sell, right? Wrong. Our cow herd is at an all-time low, 31 million head about like 1977. Our population has grown. But if you'll note, people are eating a little less beef per capita per person. But despite that fact, because the population has grown, beef sales should increase. Cattle sales should increase. Since 1987, when the checkoff program started, we've lost over 200,000 family farmers and ranchers producing cattle. Since the checkoff program, we've lost over 82,000 feedlots, small family feedlots. If I'd driven the drive I had this morning in 1984 from southeastern Wyoming to here, even on I-25, over to probably past 20 small family feeders, 100, 500. If I'd gotten off the freeway on any of the side state roads between there and here, maybe there'd be 1,000 of those or more competing for our cattle at the regional sale barns. They're all gone. JBS Swift owned feedlots. What the hell is that? Where's the Packers and Stockyard Act? 500,000 head feedlot does not bid on my cattle. They tell me what they're going to give me. So that's why I'm in a niche. But most of the producers can't get into a niche. I mean, they got mortgages. They got all the costs to be in business and do business. And they've got regulations from you guys, which are good. Don't get me wrong. We're producing the safest product on the planet, and we want to keep doing that. But it costs us. I can't compete with that stuff that comes from Brazil. They don't have our infrastructure for safe product. They have foot and mouth disease, and they have mad cow disease. And their cattle are in the tropics. They have to have Bos Indicus blood to have a chance. That's not what we want to put on our plates. I don't mind competing with them, but I want it to say product of Brazil. And I want my beef to say product of the USA, and it's from my ranch to your plate, and I want you to know that. So we pushed hard for country of origin labeling, very hard. You know, I'll bet you not more than 3 people in here driving the same brand of car, the same brand of pickup, same kind of shirts. America's a place where we have choice. And that's all I want. I don't want you to force anybody to buy my beef. I can compete. I raise the best beef in the world. And people know where it comes from. That's what I want them to know, where it comes from. My neighbors are much like me. They're cowboys. Most of them are 2nd, 3rd generation ranchers in that neighborhood. And they're solid American people who really don't know what's happened to our industry. I was blessed with exceptional education and experiences in business, so I did know what's happening, and that's why I'm in this fight. That's why I'm vice president of the Organization for Competitive Markets. So if we had country of origin labeling, and if we got rid of the checkoff program, some people think we ought to fix it. I think it ought to go away. I mean, then some person from a larger organization said to a large audience that the checkoff is working as it was intended. And I stepped back and I thought, in that case, we were misled in 1987, because what it was designed to do was run the domestic livestock producer out of business, and it's doing a very good job of that. It's doing a very good job of that. So what we need is for the checkoff to go away. And I know we probably won't get that, but I say that because I guarantee you, if the checkoff went away, and if the things that Frick is going to talk about happened, then the domestic livestock production industry and the small family farmer, not just the ranchers, cattle producers, but the small family farmers, poultry, hogs, cattle, sheep, will come back. Rural America will be saved. Rural America is gone. The small town implement dealers where I go, they're selling snowmobiles or they're gone. I mean, yeah, some of us buy tractors, but that's 5 or 10 of us in the region. The big boys buy 4 or 5 of these ranches and 200,000 acres when they get done, and they buy their equipment from their buddies somewhere else and bring it in. And I'm not saying that's bad business, it's bad for that community. So to close, I'm here all about the family livestock production, and that includes dairy. Those farming families are the foundation of a free society, because when we had that 82,000 feedlots that we've lost, when we had the 1,000 or more we've lost on the Front Range of Colorado, all of those folks paid bills, spent money in those communities. All those folks raised kids in those communities to traditional American values. When that's lost, when we're all working for somebody in a big city, our republic is lost. So I see the ability to feed our people and have competition in that food supply, where I'm actually competing with the guy down the road for who has the best cattle. I'm really focused on making those cattle better. I'm really focused on that range, that my range is such that these guys get better on this range. But when my beef is not even labeled, and if I had a feedlot, I'm going to get one bid, and I better take it. And when I get that bid, we don't price the contract. They'll come back in 10 days after they've compared my cattle to cattle they have in their feedlot from Mexico or from Brazil. And then they price my cattle, and I better take it or I don't sell anything. So I'm saying we've got a problem. It's helped me to hear part of the FSIS presentation, because it was nice to know what some of the underpinnings of the HACCP program are. And that's reassuring to know what some of those underpinnings are and how much you guys focus on safety in meat inspection. And I'm grateful to you for what you do and for the professions that you've chosen. So I'll stop there so you can hear Fred, and then we'll stay for questions either during or after you're done. No holds barred if you're asking me questions. No holds barred.
Yeah, whatever you have to do, Fred.
I can stop sharing and he can unmute. Oh, that's him, I think.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes,
You can, Fred.
and we can see you too.
We're getting there.
Oh,
Just a second.
okay.
We have to get you up on the screen.
I don't know, your kids better
I'm not sure. I know why I can't get rid of it. We're getting there. Let me close that out.
How's that?
Almost.
We're getting there.
Just a second. Okay.
There we go.
Is he ready? All right,
All
go
right.
ahead. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Fred.
Okay, I'm Fred Stokes from Mississippi. I was a farm kid, went in the military for retired until I retired in 1972, got in the cattle business, got clobbered, figured that the game was rigged, so I've been trying to unrig it for 40 plus years. I want to thank you folks for inviting us to come to this particular meeting and tell our story. I want a special thanks for Dr. Dillon. And I'm not sure if I should call him Dr. Dillon or Colonel Dillon, but for whatever title we want to apply, he's been great and very indulgent and tolerant of our pleas for help. OCM, as Mike and Taylor have explained to you, is about trying to bring transparent and openness and competition to the market so that we get a fair price for the things we buy and sell. The agriculture business has become very concentrated in recent years, and the product of that is monopolies and monopsonies. We get it on both ends. We pay too much for what we have to buy and don't get enough for what we have to sell. The result has been a system that has developed that increasingly shortchanges farmers and ranchers, and that, in fact, in more recent years, it threatens the very existence of independent family agriculture, in my view. A few years back, a Dr. Neil Harl from Iowa State was quoted as saying something that we've used quite often ever since. He says that market concentration and vertical integration are a deadly combination. And we have found that to be true. In 1998, the big packers broke the hog market down to 8 cents. Overnight, the 667,000 independent hog producers were reduced by 90%. The cash market was replaced with contracts. And a writer friend of mine wrote a piece, which I've used a good deal since then, as a quote saying that everybody in agriculture today works for the man. They're tractor drivers for Cargill, hog house janitors for Smithfield. The big companies don't own farms, they just own farmers. That's the way we're going these days. The largest hog operation in this country today is Smithfield, owned by the Communist Chinese. The big corporations have figured out a little scheme that works very nice. They shift the burden of financial investment and labor and market risk to producers and still maintain iron-fisted control of the system. Farmers that came to agriculture because of their perception that it would give them independence have become dependent and bottom end of a corporate-dominated production system. They're serfs. So we have described that as chickenization. The chicken boys blazed trail and come up with a scheme initially, and the hog guys have now followed suit. So 2 down and 1 to go. The question is, will the cattle industry get chickenized? Year after year, the beef dollar, that portion that accrued to the producers got smaller and smaller. And a disproportionately large and ever increasing share has accrued to the processor and the retailer. Probably the best example of that is the situation we have now in packer margins. I've heard all kinds of numbers, but by any measure, the current margin per head being exacted by the packers are obscene and unprecedented. You can bet that they're going to continue to exploit the situation. They've used the plant fire in Kansas, the Tyson plant fire, the slowdown from the pandemic and the processing plants, and the JBS cyber attack as excuses to work their little scheme where they pay less for cattle, charge more for beef, and make outrageous margins. And you can bet the ranch that they're going to follow the same pattern as see this developing logjam in the overall supply chain in this country. The backed up ships, the truck scarcity, and the other aspects of this slowdown. And so cowboys can pucker up. we're going to have a tough time going ahead, in my view. So what do we got to do to get out of this box? Something has to be done. It's our opinion that maybe the best way to do that is to expand independent beef processing. And there's an initiative going now, as you probably heard of. There's been $500 million appropriated to incentivize the expansion of independent meat processors, and they're looking at small and medium-sized plants. I don't think we need to get into 5,000-6,000 head a day plant yields here in this effort, but collectively we need to have enough volume to affect market prices. And that's what we're about. Our number one project in OCM now is to be a part of the effort to expand independent beef processing as a way of having competition in the cattle market, bringing more bidders to the sale to bid on our cattle. Probably because of our name and mission, we were contacted early on by the senior guy who had gotten the title of senior advisor for fair and competitive markets for USDA, a guy by the name of Andy Green, and we've developed a working relationship with him. Also, a gentleman by the name of Seth Meyer has become the chief economist of USDA, and we've developed a working relation with him. So we're attempting to have relationships with the various players in a common effort to bring about this expansion in meat processing so that we have true competition. This situation now is unsufferable by the producers. We can't endure as an industry. And this business of being vertically integrated is not a very good deal. The current administration has done some things to help bring about competition in the markets. I only hope that they're sincere. 10 years ago, 11 years ago, the Obama administration had 5 workshops, and they sang a very similar song, and some of us bought into it. We heard them say that we understand your plight, we feel your pain, be of good cheer, help is on the way. Well, we're still waiting. Absolutely nothing happened as a result of the 5 workshops that they put on. Big production. I went to 4 or 5 of them, and I talked my broke neighbor into buying tickets to go to them, and our expectations were raised, but to no avail. So the USDA has done some encouraging things, in my view. They made a move to resurrect the Packers and Stockyards Act, which has been watered down to almost nothing over the years, and effectively been removed from the books by an appellate court ruling that said you have to first show a harm to competition across the entire market of the industry in order to apply the Packers and Stockyards Act. But in any event, through rulemaking, the USDA is attempting to resurrect the Packers and Stockyards Act. In fact, Senator Grassley from Iowa has proposed legislation to install a special investigator in USDA with subpoena power to enforce the act. And we've seen some
turn off your video. We might be able to hear you. We're just having a network issue, I think.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear that. Yes. Anyway, all right, I'll just proceed. Okay, it's already been discussed. We formed an alliance with the American Antitrust Institute. You can bet that it's these fledgling plants come online,
Did you want
the
to?
predators are going to go after them. We're getting feedback from somewhere, but in any event, we feel that this currently is a great time
As you
to try
know,
to
retired meat packers who, as you do, love the industry. We are doing some fundraising so that we can hire a couple of people to be mentors for people wanting to start small meat packing processing plants. In other words, as an inspector, you can say, here are the steps you need to go through. Here are the things you need in place. And that way it will streamline the process of somebody deciding they know how to build a meat plant and they don't, but they're passionate. So if you know someone who would fit that bill, we would like to hire 2 of those people. And we're raising money to pay them. And we're also looking for entrepreneurs. I was going to get involved in a plant, but I don't have the time. I got too many irons in the fire, not enough iron tenders. And so that's really what he was going to close with. We need someone who knows the steps, knows the business, and is retired but would like to do something like that. So keep that in mind, and you can contact us, and we would be very grateful if you can do that. Thank you. Any questions for us at all? No holds barred. Yes, sir.
If you don't mind, I'd kind of like to talk for just a second about, because I've been speaking with these gentlemen over the past couple of years, particularly Mr. Stokes. I think I probably talked to Fred maybe once a quarter or so. And when I think about what we do, this is part of the reason I wanted these guys to come to this meeting, because when I think about why are we here as state programs, is it because of food safety? Sure. But take us out of the picture, fire every one of us, FSIS will do food safety. And it won't cost the taxpayers in our states anything other than their federal taxes. So food safety, sure, that's our main job, but somebody else will do that for free, right? We're here, in my opinion, because of small businesses, the American farmer and rancher in our states, consumers in our states that want products from those producers. They can go to Walmart all day, right? And they can buy cheapest ground beef they want at Walmart, produced by a big company who's sending their profits to Brazil. And go buy pork chops, send those profits to China. This is important. When we think about the American farmer and rancher, I don't have a background in this, guys. I'm from a town called Lawrence, Kansas. My family in my lifetime has owned 0 cows. I don't come from a ranch at all. I don't even come from Texas. Right? But I moved there on purpose. And so we think about why this is important. We think about the fabric of our country. And it's more than that. We talk about the importance of agriculture. Food is a form of power, right? We as the United States produce so much food that we can feed other nations. If we chose to, we could destroy entire agricultural systems just by giving people free food for 15 years and then taking it away. We could do that. That's power. We don't really think about that. And I don't think we really are doing it on purpose. I think we've done it on accident a couple times. But the thing is, nobody can do it to us. So when we think about state programs and why we are here, it's not a race to see how much like FSIS we can look like, right? It's how can we accomplish our food safety goals while doing something valuable for our state that they're not doing. It's always going to be a situation with FSIS that they're set up to deal with the big plants. They have to be, because food safety is important. And a tremendous amount of our food comes from these big plants. We all know that. And I don't really see how to get away from that, maybe ever, right? But what these guys need is they need a proliferation of small to medium-sized plants where they can make a decision that I'm not going to sell for the price that I'm handed. I'm going to go down the road. I'm going to make a deal with that slaughter plant down the road, and I may have to bring my herd to them over the course of 2 weeks for them to process them, but I'm going to do that and get a fairer price. I went into a Costco the other day. I was looking at ribeyes. USDA choice ribeyes were $14 a pound. USDA prime ribeyes were $18 a pound. And at the same time, because of talking to people like these guys, I know that the producer that produced that animal isn't seeing a cent of that increase. 2 years ago, that same USDA prime ribeye was the same price as the choice ribeye is today, $14 a pound. Choice ribeye was $9.99, which is still a heck of a lot higher than it used to be. But in just a couple years, huge increase. And I know that these guys aren't seeing it. So it makes me think about what we can do as state programs. I don't know what all the answers are, but there's things that as I look at myself and our program, we probably don't do enough proactive outreach. We deal with folks once they apply for a grant. We'll go out, do an initial inspection, tell them what isn't up to par, what they need to fix to get grant, right? But we're not doing probably enough proactive outreach. Looking for ways to help folks provide what farmers and ranchers need. And I don't know what all those answers are, but I have a few ideas. One of the ideas I kick around sometimes, and I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to get there, but a few years ago, the World Trade Organization decided that requiring producers to say where their product came from was an unfair trade practice. To call Mexican beef, and US beef was an unfair trade practice. Well, makes me wonder, is anybody going to challenge it if I started allowing folks to have a label that says this is Texas beef? So I don't know. Is that might be a thing we could do? We talked about some of these other labels like label claims like grass-fed, right? We all know that there's really not a whole lot of quality control to applying that label. Can we as state programs make that label mean more? I don't know.
I was just going to comment that we have a made in Montana label, and it is actually highly regulated. It's not just beef products. It can literally be anything. I mean, it could be screen printed t-shirts with a made in Montana thing on the label, but it is like regulated. And if we do have meat producers that put that made in Montana sticker on their product, and we treat it the same way as organic and everything else, they have to fill out the form, and there's I forget what branch of the state deals with it, but essentially they have to submit paperwork to them, and they follow the process and basically certify the business on it. So we already have that in Montana.
I like that.
We do have, I think most states have something like that. We have we have the Go Texan program in Texas. But sometimes the requirements of those are a little dicey, right? Another thing we don't really do here in state programs is I don't think anybody in the room, I know we're not, is offering grading services right now. For these guys to compete in the grocery store, your average, I think probably any of us in this room, when we go to buy a steak at a grocery store, we probably pick up all 19 of them out of the thing and look at them and decide which are the 3 best and we're going to buy those, right? Your average American can't do that. They go by what the USDA grade is on that steak, right? And so it's, I think, very tough for these guys to compete in that market space and, without grading services. And I think that's something that we're not really offering right now that maybe we ought to think about. We're not doing it either. So, but it's some things that I've thought about and, from interacting with these guys and kind of the things that I think about what we do as state programs. We spend a lot of time worrying about how we're going to deal with our audit this year, how we're going to deal with this problem plant over here that is nasty, But some of these things that aren't necessarily burning the hottest on our stoves are maybe some of the core reasons why we exist, in my mind. So that's really all I got to say, but just that's something that occurs to me when I talk to these guys.
Thank you.
Taylor, am I still on?
Oh, now you're on.
Yes.
Okay. Let me just make a couple of comments in closing here. And Dr. Dillon, I thank you profusely for your remarks, but we could use some help here. And one of the ways that you could help is by becoming a member of our little organization and lending your name and your influence to our effort. But I see this as our last best hope. If we can't pull this off and effectively bring competition to the marketplace where the cowboy gets a fair shake, where the pie is sliced fairly, then he's going to be chickenized along with the rest of them. And rural America is dying. It's dying because the money that used to come from production and agriculture and stay in the rural areas where it was produced and multiply its way through the local economy and keep other people in business. That doesn't happen anymore. The stuff is siphoned off upstairs to the big corporation. And rural America is suffering. And independent family agriculture is in jeopardy. And the only people who don't need to be concerned about this are those who don't plan to eat in the future. Food security is at play here. But in any event, I would just like to appeal to you folks to consider this thing. And if you think our effort is worthy, come in with us and join with us and help us with the fight. I'm sort of long of tooth. I've been at this thing a long time. I'd like to say that we have been successful, but what we've done is filled a bunch of dry holes. I was asked recently, if this plan doesn't work, what's your plan B? And I'm sad to say my plan B is to go fishing. But in any event, we could use some help, and we appeal to you to help us take this last chance, in my view, get something going and bring effective competition to the marketplace.
Just going to add on my thoughts. I, like many of you, have been just bombarded with phone calls in the last year and a half about how do I start a new plant, from producers on how do I get into a direct marketing type setup, because the beef price is here and the cattle price is here, and it has been for so long. And we try to help folks on through that. I guess my note of caution, or the other thought that I want to throw out here on this, if any of you work on like NIMPAN, that kind of site, niche processor systems network, one of the big things that they'll emphasize is the plant is not the customer. And so I guess that's my fear with some of the push to build new plants, build new plants, build new plants. Plant is not the customer. Those plants have to have that market base for those products, or you as a producer, because a lot of what our small plants do is processing as a service to producers. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to eat that feed. We've got to get it to the consumers that want that. And I think there are consumers that want that. I work on foodie farms, so foodies, yeah, they want to buy from you, not from Cargill or Smith or what have you. But putting the effort into making those connections and building that customer base, consumer base for small plants, I think that's going to be a key piece of that effort. Now, I'm one of those in the room. I think there's many of us that chafe against some of the limitations on distribution of state-specific products. I am a CIS state, so some of my plants can ship across state lines. The most frustrating thing that we probably deal with is the fact that a retail product can go direct to a home consumer in another state, but a state-expected product can't. Over an internet sale or the like. I know there's been at least one piece of legislation proposed called Direct Act that aims to change that, so that you as a producer with good grass-fed feed can take advantage of that state-expected slaughter facility in Wyoming, but be able to sell that to that foodie home cook in Colorado that wants to buy from you over the internet. No wholesale, which so there'll be this role for CIS, for the federal plants, but direct to that home consumer. I'm just curious whether the organization has taken a look at some of the pieces of legislation that have been proposed at a federal level. There's some that I'm more in favor of or less in favor of. There's some that I don't like. There's one that proposed to allow about sales of a custom processed product. You've heard us talk some about HACCP and food safety in this. And I have reservations about that, if only because I've seen a couple instances where someone unscrupulous brought in a dead steer to have it custom processed, stuff like that. But there are some good pieces of legislation out there that have been proposed as well. And I'm kind of curious, is your organization tracking those, or are you on board with some of those?
Yes, we are. The point you make about the plant is not the customer. It's huge. And so, well, but that's very important. But the plant needs to understand that the plant is actually my customer. But my customers, they may never meet, and sometimes they do, depending on the arrangement. But we do interact with other organizations, all trying to get something going. And the bottleneck we've run into, we've now got one USDA inspected plant in Wyoming. And I will get space in that plant in January, and I applied 2 years ago. And so, Taylor, you're a businessman, why don't you build a plant? I'm a businessman. That's why I don't build a plant. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And so that's why we need mentorship for people interested in getting in the water. But what I've done in both direct retail. You can't do it as a single rancher. You just can't do it. The demand just kills you and you can't meet it and stay in business. If somebody wants even $100 worth of hamburger, but they're 100 miles away, you gave it away. If they want a whole steer, and they're 100 miles away, you might break even on that, but nothing's going on at the ranch. So I got into what's called direct wholesale. Found small niche supermarkets that wanted the beef you're talking about, but I need space to get that beef through this USDA plant so I can cross state lines with it. So we do need more plants, but they need to be the quality that you guys are talking about and that you guys think they should be. And that's more than just a notion, I know that. I mean, you don't just sit up in bed, and even if you've got the money, and you've got this thing up and running and it's perfect. You need people who know what should happen and what shouldn't happen in that plant. And so that's part of Fred's appeal and our appeal. If you know someone, and certainly joining our organization helps. It gives us even more credibility. And I want to thank you again for having me here. And I cannot thank you enough for at least getting to see under the hood on HACCP. Because, you know, from the outside, it's just a clipboard hanging on the wall, isn't it? Right? And when us old timers, we used to seeing a lot of inspectors on the floor, in the cooler, and that kind of thing. So thank you for that.
Nothing more than, I have business cards back there. Feel free to pick up whatever you would like. And Taylor and I will be here for a little bit, so we'll
Sure.
be able to answer questions at that point. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Oh, sorry.